The message arrived on a cold morning when Hyun was feeding the injured creatures at his sanctuary. The holographic display flickered to life above his worn communicator, showing symbols he didn't recognize at first. Then the translation kicked in, and he read the words 3 times before believing them. The Velthrian Empire wanted to hire him. The actual empire. The same government that controlled 70 star systems and had existed for thousands of years, before humans even left Earth. Hyun set down the bucket of food he was carrying and sat on an old crate. His sanctuary on Tarhan 5 was nothing special, just a collection of shelters and enclosures where he took care of animals that nobody else wanted. Most were creatures that had been hurt or abandoned. Some had been used in experiments. Others had simply been too difficult for their owners to handle. He wasn't anyone important, just a guy who was good with animals. The message explained the situation in careful, formal language. The Emperor's family had a creature called a Kravix. It was a dragon-like beast that had been passed down through generations as a symbol of imperial power. For the past 2 years, this creature had killed 7 trainers, 7 highly skilled professionals from the most respected academies in the Empire, all dead. Without a bonded Kravix, the message explained, the Emperor's authority was questioned. The creature was sacred. It could not be killed or replaced. But it could not be left wild and dangerous either. They had heard about Hyun's work with difficult animals. They were offering him a contract. The payment was listed at the bottom of the message, and Hyun had to check the number twice. It was enough money to run his sanctuary for 10 years. Maybe more. There was a warning, too. The message was very clear about the danger. 6 sentient beings had died. The Empire could not guarantee his safety. If he accepted, he would be taking full responsibility for the risk. Hyun stood up and walked to the enclosure where Keiko lived. Keiko was a 4-legged creature from a nearby moon, covered in gray fur with huge dark eyes. When Hyun had found her, she had been scheduled for euthanasia. Too aggressive, they said. Attacked anyone who came near her cage. Now Keiko pressed against the fence, making soft chirping sounds as Hyun scratched behind her ears. It had taken him 3 months to earn her trust. 3 months of sitting quietly outside her enclosure, of bringing food and leaving it without demanding anything in return, of learning to read her body language and respect her fear. "What do you think?" he asked Keiko softly. "Should I help another one?" Keiko just blinked her large eyes at him. Hyun thought about the dragon, about what kind of pain and fear would drive a creature to kill 7 trainers. He thought about how the Empire probably tried to handle it, forced punishment, control, that the same methods that had failed with so many of the animals he'd rescued. He sent his acceptance that evening. 3 days later, a ship arrived to take him to the imperial capital. It was the fanciest transport Hyun had ever seen. The interior was all smooth metal and soft lighting. The pilot was a tall, blue-skinned Velthrian who barely looked at him during the 2-day journey. When they arrived at the capital world, Hyun pressed his face to the window like a child. The planet was covered in massive structures that gleamed in the light of twin suns. Cities stretched as far as he could see. Ships moved through the air in organized streams, thousands of them like schools of fish. The imperial palace sat in the center of the largest city. It was a structure so enormous that Hyun couldn't see where it ended. Towers reached toward the sky, connected by bridges and platforms. Gardens floated on anti-gravity fields between the buildings. They landed on a private platform where guards in ceremonial armor waited. The armor was decorated with symbols that probably meant something important. The guards carried weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. A Velthrian official greeted him. The alien was tall and thin, with skin that shifted between blue and purple. His eyes were large and golden, and they looked at Hyun with obvious doubt. "You are the human?" The official's voice came through a translator that made it sound flat and emotionless. "Yes. My name is Hyun. I am Korthain, master of imperial beasts." The official looked Hyun up and down. "You are younger than I expected. And smaller." Hyun was used to that reaction. Humans were not impressive by galactic standards. They weren't particularly strong or fast. They didn't have natural weapons or armor. Most species saw them as soft and weak. "I'm good at what I do," Hyun said quietly. Korthain made a sound that the translator didn't even try to interpret. "We shall see, come. The Emperor is waiting." They walked through corridors that made Hyun feel very small. Everything was built on a scale meant for beings larger than humans. The ceilings were high. The doorways were wide. Art covered the walls, showing scenes of battles and ceremonies from thousands of years of history. Finally, they entered a large chamber where Emperor Talvex III sat on a throne that looked like it was carved from a single piece of black stone. The Emperor was massive, even for a Velthrian. His skin was deep purple, almost black, and marked with silver patterns that indicated his royal bloodline. Hyun bowed the way he'd been instructed in the information packet. "Rise. Human." The Emperor's voice was deep and tired. "You understand the task before you?" "Yes, Your Majesty. I'll do my best to help your Kravix." "Help?" Korthane interrupted. "The creature needs to be trained, not helped. It needs to remember its place and its duty." Hyun didn't argue. Not yet. He'd learned that people rarely listened until they saw results. The Emperor waved a hand and a holographic display appeared in the air. It showed a creature that made Hyun's breath catch. The Kravix was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It had scales that looked black but shimmered with other colors when the light hit them, 4 powerful legs ending in claws that could tear through metal, wings that were currently folded but looked large enough to block out the sun, a long tail with spikes along its length, and a head that was almost elegant with intelligent amber eyes and teeth like swords. "This is Ashanthra," the Emperor said. "She has been in my family for 12 generations. My father bonded with her when he was young. They were together for 40 years. When he died, she should have bonded with me. Instead, she has killed everyone who has tried to train her." The display showed clips of the previous attempts, trainers approaching with shock sticks, others trying to use neural collars that caused pain. Some attempted to starve her into submission. Others used chemicals to make her docile. Every attempt ended the same way. The Kravix would tolerate the treatment for a time and then something would snap. The videos cut off before showing the deaths, but Hyun could imagine what happened. "I don't train animals," Hyun said quietly. "I help them heal," Korthane laughed. "Heal? The creature is not injured. It is defiant." But Hyun was looking at the Emperor and he saw something there. A flicker of hope, maybe. Or desperation. "I need 3 days alone with her," Hyun said. "No guards, no weapons, no observers." The chamber fell silent. "That is suicide," Korthane said. "Maybe," Hyun agreed, "but it's the only way I work." The Emperor stared at him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. 3 days. If you survive, we will discuss what comes next. If you do not..." He paused. "You will be honored for your attempt." Hyun nodded. He'd expected nothing less. They took him to see Ashanthra's enclosure that evening. It was a massive arena surrounded by walls reinforced with energy shields. Guards stood at every entrance with weapons ready. The whole place felt like a prison, and in the center, chained and alone, was the most magnificent creature Hyun had ever seen. Ashanthra raised her head as they approached. Her amber eyes locked onto Hyun, and he felt the weight of her stare. Intelligence looked back at him, and pain. So much pain. Hyun took a breath and smiled softly. "Hello," he whispered, too quiet for anyone else to hear. "I'm here to help." Tomorrow he would enter that arena. Tomorrow he would meet the dragon that had killed 7 trainers. Tonight he just wanted her to see a face that didn't carry a weapon. The morning came too quickly. Hyun had barely slept, lying in the guest quarters and thinking about Ashanthra, about what she must have endured, about what drove a creature to kill 7 beings who were supposedly trying to help her. Korthane arrived early, his expression making it clear he expected to be collecting a body by the end of the day. Several other officials came with him, along with a medical team and guards. They all looked at Hyun like he was already dead. "This is your final chance to reconsider," Korthane said as they walked toward the arena. "There is no shame in admitting this task is beyond you." "I appreciate that," Hyun replied calmly. "But I'm ready." They stopped at the entrance to the arena. Through the reinforced walls, Hyun could hear movement, the scrape of claws on stone, the rustle of wings. Ashanthra was awake. "The procedure is simple," Korthane explained. "You will enter through the main gate. We will seal it behind you. Emergency extraction teams will be standing by, but understand that if the Kravix attacks, they may not reach you in time." Hyun nodded. He was carrying a bag with supplies. Water, some dried meat, a medical kit, Tools for treating injuries. No weapons, no devices for controlling or hurting her. You remember the protocol? Corthane asked. Assert dominance immediately. Kravix respect strength. Show weakness, and she will kill you. I remember, Hyun said. He had no intention of following that advice. They opened the gate. The arena stretched before him, a circular space about 100 meters across. The floor was scarred from previous battles and training sessions. Burn marks. Deep gouges in the stone. Dark stains that might have been blood. Ashenthra was at the far end, partially hidden in shadows. Hyun could see her outline. The massive body. The wings folded against her sides. Her head turned toward him as he entered, and he saw those amber eyes catch the light. The gate sealed behind him with a heavy sound. He was alone with her now. For a moment, neither of them moved. Hyun could feel his heart beating fast, but he kept his breathing steady. Fear was natural. Panic was the enemy. Then Ashenthra moved. She stepped forward into the light, and Hyun saw her clearly for the first time. She was even larger than he'd thought. Her scales were dark as midnight, each one the size of his hand. Her claws left marks in the stone floor with each step. When she spread her wings slightly, they seemed to fill half the arena. She was magnificent, and she was terrified. Hyun could see it in the way she held herself, the tension in her muscles, the way her eyes darted around the arena, looking for threats. The slight trembling in her wings. This wasn't aggression. This was fear. Ashenthra roared. The sound hit Hyun like a physical wave. It echoed off the walls, so loud it hurt. It was meant to be intimidating, a warning. Back off or die. Hyun didn't run. He didn't shout. He didn't activate any weapons or defenses. He sat down. Right there, about 20 meters from her, he lowered himself to the ground and sat cross-legged. He set his bag beside him. Then he looked at Ashenthra and spoke in a gentle voice. You're safe now. The dragon froze. Her head tilted slightly, confused. This wasn't how trainers acted. They shouted. They threatened. They hurt her until she submitted. This human just sat there. Minutes passed. Hyun didn't move. He watched Ashenthra, but not in an aggressive way. He was reading her body language, learning her signals. Every creature communicated even if they didn't use words. Outside the arena, he knew people were watching through cameras and sensors. They probably thought he was insane. Maybe he was. But he'd seen this pattern before with traumatized animals. They expected violence because violence was all they'd known. Ashenthra took a step closer. Then another. She moved carefully, like she was approaching something dangerous. When she was about 10 meters away, she stopped and lowered her head to his level. They stared at each other. Hyun could see the scars on her scales now. Burns from energy weapons, marks from chains and restraints, a section of her wing that hadn't healed properly and probably caused pain when she flew. They hurt you, he said softly. I can see that, I'm sorry. Ashenthra's eyes narrowed. She made a sound lower than the roar, almost like a growl. It vibrated through the ground. Hyun didn't flinch. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm not here to control you. I just want to help. The dragon's tail lashed suddenly, slamming into the ground beside Hyun with enough force to crack the stone. A warning. A test. Hyun didn't move. His heart was racing, but he kept his face calm. It's okay, he whispered. You're safe. They stayed like that for hours. Sometimes Ashenthra would move away, pacing the arena. Sometimes she'd come closer, studying him. Hyun just sat quietly, occasionally drinking water or eating a little food. He didn't try to approach her, didn't try to touch her. He just existed in her space, showing her that he was no threat. By midday, Ashenthra had settled on the opposite side of the arena. She lay down but kept her head up, watching him constantly. Hyun noticed she favored her left wing, the one with the bad scar. He reached into his bag slowly, making sure she could see every movement. He pulled out a container of medical gel, one designed for treating burns and promoting healing. He held it up so she could see it, then set it on the ground halfway between them. For your wing, he said. If you want it. No pressure. Then he moved back to his spot and sat down again. Ashenthra stared at the container for a long time. Finally, she stood and approached it cautiously. She sniffed it, her nostrils flaring. Then she knocked it over with one claw and backed away quickly, like it might explode. When nothing happened, she looked at Hyun. He smiled. It's okay. It's just medicine. It'll help with the pain. The first day ended with no progress beyond that. The guards came to escort Hyun out, their weapons ready in case Ashenthra attacked during the exit. But the dragon just watched him leave. Well? Korthane demanded. Did you assert dominance? Not exactly, Hyun admitted. Then what did you accomplish? She didn't kill me. Korthane looked disgusted. That is not progress. That is barely survival. But the Emperor, watching through the security feeds, had seen something interesting. The Kravix had been calmer than she'd been in months. No attacks, no violent outbursts. She'd been curious about the human. The second day, Hyun brought fresh meat. He'd learned what Kravix ate from the Imperial records. He set the food in the same spot as the medicine and returned to his position. This time, Ashenthra approached more quickly. She ate the meat, watching him the entire time. When she finished, she moved closer. Close enough that Hyun could have reached out and touched her. He didn't. Not yet. Instead, he talked to her. He told her about his sanctuary, about the animals he'd helped, about Kiko, who everyone said was too dangerous to save. They were wrong about her, Hyun said. And they're wrong about you. You're not a monster. You're just scared and hurt and angry. And that's okay. Anyone would be, after what you've been through. Ashenthra made a sound he hadn't heard before. Softer, almost curious. That evening, when Hyun stood to leave, he noticed the medicine container had been moved. Some of the gel was gone. She'd used it. On the third day, something changed. When Hyun entered the arena, Ashenthra was waiting near the entrance. She didn't roar, didn't threaten. She just watched as he walked to his usual spot. He sat down and she approached immediately. She lowered her massive head until it was right in front of him, close enough that he could feel her breath. It was warm and smelled like smoke and metal. Hyun stayed very still. This was the moment. Either she trusted him or she didn't. You're safe now, he whispered. Ashenthra's eyes closed for a moment. When they opened again, something had shifted in them. The constant fear and anger had softened, slowly. Very slowly. Hyun raised his hand. He moved it toward her snout, giving her every chance to pull away. His fingers touched her scales. They were warm, smoother than he expected. He could feel her breathing, the rise and fall of her massive chest. Ashenthra didn't pull away. She leaned into his touch just slightly. Outside the arena, alarms went off. The security team thought she was attacking, but the Emperor held up a hand, stopping them. Wait, he ordered. Look. On the screens they watched as the human sat there, touching the creature that had killed 7 trainers, and Ashenthra, the dragon that had been called vicious and untrainable, simply closed her eyes and accepted the gentle contact. Impossible, Korthane breathed. But it wasn't impossible. It was just different. When Hyun left the arena that day, Ashenthra followed him to the gate. She made a sound, low and almost sad, as if asking him not to go. I'll come back tomorrow, Hyun promised. I'll always come back. And for the first time in 2 years, the dragon that everyone feared seemed at peace. News of Hyun's success spread through the Imperial Palace like wildfire. The human had done what 7 expert trainers could not. He'd touched the Kravix. He'd earned her trust. People who had ignored him before suddenly wanted to meet him. Officials who had dismissed humans as primitive now looked at him with curiosity, and respect. Korthane was not among them. 3 days of sitting and whispering, the Beastmaster said during a meeting with the Emperor. This proves nothing. The Kravix has not been trained. She has not demonstrated combat capability. She has not submitted to Imperial authority. The Emperor sat on his throne looking tired. She has not killed anyone either. For the first time in 2 years, Ashanthra is calm. Calm is not enough, Corthine insisted. The Kravix is a symbol of imperial power. She must be fierce, obedient, a weapon to strike fear into our enemies. Perhaps, said a new voice. We have been thinking about this wrong. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. She was a young Velthrian woman with pale blue skin and silver markings. Her robes indicated she was a palace archivist. Her name was Minji, and she rarely spoke during imperial meetings. Explain, the Emperor commanded. Minji stepped forward nervously. I have been researching the historical records of Kravix bonding. In the earliest accounts, thousands of years ago, their relationship was described differently. The Kravix were partners, not property. They chose their bonded companions. The bond was mutual. Corthine waved a dismissive hand. Ancient superstition. We have refined the training methods over centuries. Have we? Minji pulled up a holographic display. I compared the success rates. In the old records, bonding failures were rare. In the last 500 years, as training became more focused on dominance and control, the failure rate has increased significantly. The Emperor leaned forward, interested. Continue. Ashanthra's previous bond was with your father. By all accounts, they had a strong partnership. He treated her with respect. When he died, she grieved. The records show she refused food for weeks, and then the new training began. The display showed documentation of the training methods used on Ashanthra: pain compliance, shock conditioning, food deprivation, chemical sedation, each method more aggressive than the last, trying to break her resistance. She was in mourning, Minji said quietly, and we treated her grief as defiance. The chamber fell silent. Even Corthane looked uncomfortable. The Emperor stood slowly. Take me to the human. They found Hyun in the arena with Ashanthra. He was treating the scar on her wing, applying the medical gel carefully while she sat perfectly still. He talked to her the whole time, his voice soft and reassuring. This might feel cold, he said, spreading the gel along the damaged scales, but it'll help with the inflammation. Give it a few days and you should be able to fly without pain. Ashanthra made a rumbling sound that seemed almost like a purr. The Emperor and his entourage watched from the observation platform above. They had entered quietly, not wanting to disturb the scene below. He speaks to her like an equal, one official whispered. Not like a trainer to a beast. Because she's not a beast, another replied. Look at how she responds. That's intelligence. When Hyun finished applying the medicine, he sat back. Ashanthra turned her head and gently pressed her snout against his shoulder. It was unmistakably a gesture of affection. Good girl, Hyun said, scratching the scales under her jaw. You're doing great. The Emperor descended to the arena floor. Guards moved to follow, but he stopped them. Wait here. He entered through the main gate alone. Ashanthra's head snapped up immediately, her eyes locking onto the Emperor. Her body tensed. A low growl rumbled from her chest. Ashanthra, no, Hyun said quickly, standing and placing himself slightly between them. It's okay. He's not here to hurt you. But the dragon didn't relax. She recognized the Emperor, associated him with the pain and fear of the past 2 years. The Emperor stopped walking, seeing her reaction. For the first time, he truly looked at the creature that had been in his family for generations. He saw the scars, the fear in her eyes, the way she positioned herself protectively near the human. I did not know, he said, his voice heavy. I thought the trainers were following proper protocol. I did not realize what we were doing to you. Ashanthra's growl deepened. Your Majesty, Hyun said carefully, maybe we should do this gradually. She's been hurt by a lot of people. Trust takes time. The Emperor nodded slowly and backed toward the exit. But before he left, he turned to look at Ashanthra one more time. I am sorry, he said. Truly. Over the next few weeks, Hyun continued working with Ashanthra. He established routines. Morning feeding, during which he would check her health and tend to any injuries. Afternoon exercises where she could stretch her wings and move freely around the arena. Evening conversations where Hyun would simply sit with her and talk. She began showing him things. One day, she brought him a piece of broken chain that had been lying in a corner of the arena. She dropped it at his feet and made an angry sound. Yeah, Hyun said, picking up the chain. I don't like these either. Want me to get rid of them? She bobbed her head. Hyun realized she understood him. Maybe not the words exactly, but the intent behind them. He requested that all chains, collars, and restraining devices be removed from the arena. Corthane protested, but the Emperor approved the request. When the equipment was cleared out, Ashenthra explored every corner of the arena, as if making sure all the tools of her torment were truly gone. Then she returned to Hyun and pressed her head against him so hard she nearly knocked him over. "You're welcome," he laughed, hugging her massive neck. Minji started visiting the arena regularly. She would sit quietly and watch Hyun work, taking notes. Sometimes she would ask questions. "How do you know what she's feeling?" she asked one day. "Body language," Hyun explained. "See how her wings are relaxed? That means she's comfortable. If they tense up, she's alert or worried. Her tail is a good indicator, too. When it moves slowly, she's calm. Fast movements mean she's agitated." "We never studied these things," Minji admitted. "We focused on command compliance, response to punishment and reward. That works with some animals," Hyun said. "But Ashenthra isn't just an animal. She's smart. She has emotions. She remembers. You can't force someone like that to obey. You have to earn their respect." Minji wrote everything down. "The Empire needs to learn this." But not everyone agreed. Corthane grew more vocal in his opposition. He gathered support from traditionalist officials who believed the old ways were being abandoned for soft human sentimentality. "The Kravix must prove her worth," Corthane demanded during a council meeting. "It has been a month. The human has made her docile, perhaps, but not useful. She must demonstrate combat capability." "She can fly now," Hyun pointed out. He had been invited to the meeting to report on progress. "The wing has healed. She's healthy and strong." "Flying is not enough," Corthane said. "She must be tested. The bonding trial must be performed." The bonding trial was an ancient ceremony. The Kravix would be presented to the full imperial court and required to demonstrate loyalty and power. Attack practice targets, perform aggressive displays, and ultimately allow the Emperor to mount her back and command her in flight. Hyun felt his stomach drop. That's not a good idea. She's making progress, but forcing her into a performance. "The trial is tradition," Corthane interrupted. "Without it, the bond is not legitimate. Without a legitimate bond, the Emperor's authority is questioned." The Emperor looked troubled. "The political situation is delicate. The outer colonies are restless. My enemies use the unbonded Kravix as evidence of weakness." "Give us more time," Hyun pleaded. "Ashenthra trusts me, but she's still recovering emotionally. Putting her in a stressful situation with crowds and expectations." "The trial will proceed in 3 days," Corthane announced, and several council members nodded agreement. The Emperor looked at Hyun. "Can she do it?" Hyun wanted to say no, wanted to refuse, but he saw the position the Emperor was in. Politics he didn't fully understand. Pressures from powerful people who saw Ashenthra as a tool, not a living being. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I'll prepare her as best I can." That night, Hyun sat in the arena with Ashenthra. She sensed his worry and pressed close to him, making concerned sounds. "They want you to perform," he told her. "To prove you're fierce and loyal. But I don't want to push you. I don't want to make you do things you're not ready for." Ashenthra tilted her head, listening. "The thing is," Hyun continued, "if you don't do this, they might go back to the old methods. Corthane is looking for any excuse to say my way doesn't work, and I'm scared of what they'll do to you if that happens." The dragon made a soft rumbling sound. Then she did something that surprised him. She extended her wing and used it to gently pull him closer, like an embrace. Hyun felt tears in his eyes. "You're such a good girl. I'm sorry I have to ask this of you." Over the next 3 days, Hyun tried to prepare Ashenthra for what was coming. He gradually introduced more people into the arena, letting her get used to observers. He worked with her on basic commands, though he framed them as requests rather than demands. Minji helped however she could. She researched the trial requirements and coached Hyun on what would be expected. "The hardest part will be at the end," she said. "The Emperor must mount her back. It's symbolic, shows that she accepts his authority." "She barely tolerates him being in the same arena," Hyun said. "How am I supposed to get her to let him ride her?" "I don't know," Minji admitted. "But if you can't, Corthane will use it as proof that your methods failed." The night before the trial, Hyun couldn't sleep. He went to the arena and found Ashenthra waiting. She knew something was wrong. He sat beside her and put his hand on her scales. "Tomorrow is going to be hard," he said quietly. "For both of us. But I'll be there with you. And no matter what happens, you're safe. I promise. Ashenthra lowered her head into his lap as much as a creature her size could, and they sat together in the darkness, human and dragon, facing an uncertain tomorrow. The grand arena was filled with thousands of spectators, members of the imperial court, military officials, representatives from colony worlds, and nobles from across the empire. They sat in tiered seating that rose high above the arena floor, creating a bowl of faces all focused on the center. Hyun stood at the entrance with Ashenthra, watching the crowd through the gate. His heart was pounding. The dragon beside him was tense, her scales rippling with barely contained stress. Too many, she seemed to say through her body language. Too loud. Too much. I know, Hyun whispered, his hand on her neck. I know this is hard, but I'm right here with you. We'll get through this together. Minji appeared at his side, her face pale. They've made some additions to the trial. Corthane insisted. What kind of additions? She pulled up a data pad and showed him. Combat demonstrations. Aggressive displays against multiple targets. And they've built a platform where the Emperor will stand. Ashenthra must approach it and bow before allowing him to mount. Hyun felt sick. That's not what we practiced. She's not ready for— I'm sorry, Minji said. I tried to argue against it. But Corthane convinced the council that anything less would be inadequate. The gate began to open. Light flooded in from the arena. The sound of thousands of voices created a wall of noise. Ashenthra took a step back, her wings starting to spread in a defensive posture. Wait, Hyun called out. We need more time. She's not— The trial begins now. Corthane's voice boomed through speakers. Present the Kravix. Hyun looked at Ashenthra. At the fear in her eyes, at the way her whole body was shaking, he made a decision. No, he said. The noise from the crowd quieted. People leaned forward, confused. What did you say? Corthane demanded. I said no. Hyun repeated louder. Ashenthra isn't ready for this. You changed the trial parameters without giving us time to prepare. This isn't about testing her capability. This is about setting her up to fail. Corthane appeared on a viewing platform above the arena, his face twisted in anger. You dare refuse an Imperial command? I dare to protect a living being from being used as a political prop, Hyun shot back. You want to see her fail so you can go back to your old methods. Methods that killed 7 trainers and traumatized this creature for 2 years. The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. No one spoke to the master of Imperial beasts this way. Certainly not a human. The Emperor rose from his throne, silencing everyone. Human Hyun, you were hired to prepare the Kravix for this trial. You accepted the contract. Are you now refusing to fulfill it? Hyun took a breath. This could end very badly for him. But he looked at Ashenthra, still trembling beside him, and knew he couldn't force her through this. Your Majesty, I was hired to help Ashenthra. That's what I've been doing. She's healthier now, stronger, she trusts again, but trust is fragile. If I force her into this situation unprepared, it could undo everything we've accomplished. Then she is useless, Corthane declared. A Kravix who cannot perform is no better than a wild animal. She should be— She's not useless, a new voice interrupted. She's traumatized. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was Do-hyun, the Emperor's younger brother. He rarely involved himself in court politics, preferring to spend time in the palace libraries studying history and philosophy. Do-hyun walked down to the arena floor and approached the gate where Hyun stood with Ashenthra. The dragon watched him warily but didn't growl. I've been watching the human work, Do-hyun continued. I've seen what he's accomplished. Ashenthra was dying before he came. Not physically, perhaps, but in every other way that matters. She had given up. And now she's recovering. But recovery takes time. This is not a medical facility, Corthane said. This is the Imperial Court. We have traditions, standards. Standards that have clearly failed, Do-hyun countered. 7 trainers dead, 2 years of disaster, and then 1 human with different methods succeeds in 3 days. Perhaps our traditions need to be questioned. The crowd reacted with gasps and arguments. Some supported Do-hyun. Others were outraged at the suggestion that ancient Velthrian ways might be flawed. The Emperor held up his hand for silence. He stared at Hyun for a long moment. What would you have me do, human? The political situation demands that I demonstrate control of the Kravix. My authority is questioned. If I cannot show a proper bond, then maybe the bond shouldn't be about control, Hyun said. Maybe it should be about partnership, like it was in the old days. He looked at Minji, who nodded and pulled up her research on a large display for everyone to see. The ancient accounts of Kravix bonding, partnerships based on mutual respect, loyalty earned, not forced. Your ancestors didn't dominate their Kravix, Hyun explained. They befriended them. The bond was strong because it was chosen by both sides. Sentiment and superstition, Korthane spat. We are a modern empire. We use proven techniques. Your proven techniques got 7 people killed, Hyun said bluntly. Mine kept me alive and earned Ashenthra's trust. Which actually seems more effective? The Emperor descended from his throne. Guards moved to follow, but he waved them back. He walked across the arena floor toward where Hyun stood with Ashenthra. The dragon's body tensed. A low growl started in her throat. It's okay, Hyun said to her. Give him a chance. The Emperor stopped several meters away. He looked at Ashenthra, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time since his father died. I remember you, he said quietly. You used to let me ride on your back when I was young. My father would laugh and tell me to hold on tight. You were gentle with me then, patient with a child who didn't know his own strength. Ashenthra's growl faded slightly, her eyes fixed on the Emperor's face. When my father died, I was so focused on my duties as the new Emperor that I didn't think about your grief. I should have. You lost someone you loved. Instead of giving you time to mourn, I let the trainers begin their work immediately. The Emperor took one step closer. I am sorry, Ashenthra, for your pain, for your suffering, for treating you as a tool instead of as the companion you were to my father. The arena was completely silent. Everyone watched as the Emperor, the most powerful being in 70 star systems, apologized to a creature. Ashenthra made a sound. Not a growl or a roar, something softer. Questioning. Your Majesty, Hyun said carefully. May I suggest something? The Emperor nodded. Don't try to command her. Don't try to dominate her, just ask. Ask if she'll let you approach. Ask if she'll accept your touch. Give her the choice, and then the Emperor looked uncertain. That is not how Kravix bonding works. It's not how it's worked recently, Hyun corrected. But Minji's research suggests it's how it used to work. Before your empire decided control was more important than connection. The Emperor looked at his brother, who nodded encouragingly, then at Minji, who pulled up more ancient texts showing the old bonding ceremonies. They were nothing like the modern trial. They were simple, respectful, a request and an acceptance. The Emperor turned back to Ashenthra. May I approach you? He asked. The dragon didn't move. Didn't give permission, but she didn't refuse either. He took another step, then another, slowly closing the distance between them. I know I cannot replace my father in your heart, the Emperor continued. I know I failed you when you needed understanding, but if you will allow it, I would like to try again. Not as master to beast, but as partner to partner, the way it should have been from the beginning. He was close enough now that Ashenthra could strike if she wanted. Her head was level with his. One snap of her jaws would be fatal. Instead, she leaned forward and sniffed him, learning his scent, remembering perhaps the child he used to be. The Emperor slowly raised his hand. May I? He asked. For several heartbeats, nothing happened. The entire arena held its breath. Then Ashenthra lowered her head and allowed the Emperor to place his hand on her scales. The crowd erupted, some in approval, some in shock, some in anger that tradition was being cast aside. But Hyun was watching Ashenthra, and he saw her body relax slightly. Saw the way she leaned into the Emperor's touch just a little. It wasn't the bond his father had with her. Not yet, maybe not ever, but it was a beginning. This proves nothing, Korthane shouted over the noise. She must still complete the trial. She must demonstrate combat capability and accept the Emperor as her rider. No, the Emperor said, his hand still on Ashenthra's scales. She doesn't. He turned to face the crowd. I am changing the requirements of the Kravix bond. From this day forward, it will no longer be about domination and control. It will be about partnership and mutual respect. Ashenthra has endured enough. She owes us nothing more. Your Majesty, the tradition, Korthane started. Tradition nearly destroyed her, the Emperor interrupted. Tradition killed 7 of our people. Perhaps it is time for new traditions, better ones. He looked at Hyun. You will stay as advisor. Teach us your methods. Help us understand what we have been doing wrong. Korthane's face was purple with rage. This is an insult to our ways, to our heritage. You would take lessons from a primitive species that has barely left its own world? If that primitive species understands compassion better than we do, the Emperor said, then yes. Proudly. The arena descended into chaos. Arguments erupted throughout the crowd. Some supported the Emperor's decision. Others were outraged. The political implications would take months to sort out. But in the center of it all, Hyun stood with Ashanthra, and for the first time since he'd arrived, the dragon's body was completely relaxed. She pressed against him and he hugged her neck. "You did it," he whispered. "You were so brave." Ashanthra made her rumbling purr sound, and though the Empire was in turmoil around them, in that moment everything was right.